Welcome back to Movies TV Mad, and of course you can follow me on Twitter, which most of you do anyway. Thank you for that, at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Wednesday's edition of the DCEU Daily. So this is how we're going to do things today. I'm going to read you a couple of articles, give you your DC updates, and then we're going to have a long 15-20 minute chat about Zack Snyder, because there's certain things I have to readdress about what I've been reading on the internet. We have to talk about hypocrisy when the conversations are about Zack Snyder. Anyway, let's get into your couple of DC updates. Shazam 2 takes place 2 years after the first movie. Shazam Fury of the Gods takes place 2 years after Sandberg's 2019 Shazam movie. Lead actor Zachary Levi confirmed that the DC fandom China by Saeed Fadullah Hassani of Screen Rant. Shazam Fury of the Gods is set 2 years after the original movie, directed by Lights Out filmmaker David F. Sandberg. The first Shazam movie came out in 2019, chronicling the tale of troubled orphan Billy Batson, Asher Angel, as he acquires the ability to transform into an adult superhero, Zachary Levi. Critically, Shazam was praised for its light-heartedness and joyful overtones, and commercially too. The film performed well at the box office, netting $366 million worldwide against a budget of $80 to $100 million. How does Walter Hamada do these budgets? They're amazing, aren't they? But it brought in big profit. In fact, Shazam was cheaper to make than either of the Ant-Man movies as well. So that's interesting. When we look at Ant-Man box office, we've got to look at the budgets as well. Given its success, WB and DC Films quickly put a sequel in development, which is currently scheduled to premiere on June the 2nd, 2023. Last Saturday, fans got their hands on many important details from Shazam 2 when the BTS trailer for the movie was unveiled at the DC fandom. Firstly, the footage spotlighted the movie's new villains, Calypso and Hespera, played by Lucy Liu and Helen Mirren. It's Dame Helen Mirren to you. Some new locations were also teased, along with the supernatural creatures that will appear in the movie. The trailer was also provided a good look at the returning cast, including Angel, Jack Dylan Grazer, Faith Herman, Ian Chen, Grace Fulton, and Jovan Amand among the teenagers, plus Levi, Adam Brody, Megan Good, Ross Butler, and DJ Katrona are full-grown superheroes. The story for the sequel hasn't been revealed, but new details show how much time has elapsed since the end of the first film. During an appearance at the DC fandom China, Levi confirmed via DC Verso that Shazam Fury of the Gods is set 2 years after Shazam in the original movie. Billy Batson was 15, but he will be 17 and just a year away from becoming an adult in the sequel. Levi additionally teased Billy's whereabouts during the time jump. He stated that by the time the new movie premieres, the teenager would have become the leader of the Shazam family after spending 2 years fighting thieves and criminals. I like this, because in the first film he's immature, he's a kid, and in this movie he's the leader of the team. I like that because he's matured. There's evolution, there's character evolution, and I really like that. It makes sense for Shazam 2 to be set some years after the original film, as otherwise it would be hard to explain how the teenagers have grown up so much. Right from when the sequel was greenlit, Sandberg has been trying to hurry work on the film, as he feared that if too much time passes by, the young cast will become too old to play their parts convincingly. This is the reason why, although Shazam 2 won't release for a full 2 years, production on the movie has already been completed. With the time jump, some logical questions arise about the superpowers of the Shazam family, since Billy will be just a year away from turning 18 in Shazam 2. It will be interesting to see if he can still transform into his grown-up alter ego after he is an adult. The sequel already has Grace Fulton playing both versions of Billy's 19-year-old foster sibling Mary, but that's more because that is how her powers were established in the Golden Age. It's however also likely that the DCEU might change the Shazam family's powers so that they can choose their form once they are legally an adult. Although to know for sure, fans would have to wait for more details on Shazam 2. The 2-year time jump provides a smooth transition from the first movie to the second and builds intrigue to see how the characters have changed over the years. Yeah, ultimately it's not rocket science, is it? When they're not kids anymore, I think by the end of the movie they'll say, right, we choose to look like ourselves now, in costumes. And that's fine. Again, that's part of the character evolution. I'm just wondering, because Billy Batson's been doing such a good job of leading the Shazam family since we've seen him last, I wonder if we get a cameo from Gal's Wonder Woman or Ben's Batman or Henry's Superman, more likely Henry's Superman, giving Asher Angel's Billy Batson an invite to become members of the Justice League. I think that would be another great evolution for the Shazam family. We'll have to wait and see, but I really do like how this film is shaping up. There's not one of these upcoming films where I'm saying, well, I'm not really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to them all. Obviously, there are levels. I'm looking forward to some more than others because some are very, very major movies, like the Batman and the Flash movie are very, very important to the future of the DCEU. But so is Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and I think we're going to see stuff in that film that progresses, you know, the shared universe, and I think that's also very important. Right, superfan Scott Edwards asked me to react to the brand new Flash Ensemble's Legion of Superheroes in Arrowverse crossover trailer. But let me be clear about this, Scott. I was copyright striked the other day, or copyright claimed a couple of times for reacting to trailers on my reaction to DC fandom. So I'm not actually going to react to the trailer, but what I will do is I'll actually talk about, you know, this Flash 5-episode crossover. So I did see the trailer. I didn't like it. I didn't like what I saw. It looked very amateur. It didn't excite me. And they're using this whole, oh, everyone's going to die, so we have to team up. But when you see all these characters, there's a couple of the characters, you know, Brandon Routh being back as Atom is great. I like him. And there's one or two others I'm excited about. But when you look at Batwoman and, you know, Maya Queen and things like that, you just think, why? Who asked to see these crossovers? Because they're not the crossovers anyone wants to see. So I wasn't overly impressed with the trailer, Scott, but we will give it a read. Let's give a read and see what this article by Paul Sherry has to say. The Flash Ensemble's Legion of Superheroes, including the Atom, Black Lightning. Black Lightning's a good addition, by the way. I'm excited about him. And more in the trailer for the 5-part Arrowverse crossover. The Flash Ensemble's The Legion of Superheroes in the new Arrowverse crossover trailer. The Flash stars Grant Gustin as Barry Allen and is entering its 8th season on the CW, reuniting the regular cast with a slew of guest appearances right from the start. The character has starred in multiple crossover events already, and it was announced this summer that it would kick off with a new Arrowverse crossover event titled Armageddon. I think the choice of doing a 5-episode crossover at the beginning of the season is interesting. Will this 5-episode crossover have anything to do with what they're doing with the arc of the season? I have no idea really. I don't think it's a good idea to do a crossover at the beginning of the season. Maybe after the first 5 episodes that would have been interesting. I just think they did this out of desperation because everyone kept on demanding a crossover, and I think they've rushed and put together, you know, a hasty crossover that may not work. We'll have to wait and see to actually see it. The crossover will bring together the Legion of Superheroes, which consists of Gustin's The Flash, his wife Iris Candice Patton and the supporting cast of The Flash, to battle a powerful alien threat which arrives on Earth under mysterious circumstances. However, with the stakes so high, The Flash and his crew must enlist some strong allies to win the fight. I mean, I don't understand what Batwoman can do against aliens. That's a weird inclusion, isn't it? Those allies consist of Batwoman stars Javicia Leslie, Black Lightning Cress Williams, the Atom Brandon Routh, Sentinel Shyla Lee, Maya Queen Kat McNamara, and Ryan Choi, Osric Charles. Now, Ryan Choi, that's awesome. That's exciting as well. So there's 2 or 3 I'm actually excited about. Today, The Flash debuted the first trailer for the 5-part event, which teases what to expect from the 8th season. The trailer shows glimpses of the heroes mentioned above and the new villain, Despero, as played by Tony Curran. Basically, Tony is an amazing actor, by the way, who is decidedly more human-looking than his comic book persona so far. Whether or not he'll change into his more comic-accurate form is unknown. But showrunner Eric Wallace has said to be careful what you see in regards to Curran's look. Your eyes can sometimes deceive you. The show returns on November the 16th at 8 PM on the CW. Check out the trailer below. So if you haven't checked it out, I advise you to look at it so you can judge it for yourself. I've seen the trailer. My reasons for not reacting to it is because I'm just going to get another copyright claim. I can't really afford that. Now, I'm willing to do it for DCEU movies because it's huge, right? And more epic shows that I actually enjoy, but not for this one. It's just not worth the copyright claim. Executive producer Eric Williams, it's Eric Wallace actually, oh dear, said recently of the event, simply put, these are going to be some of the most emotional Flash episodes ever. Plus there are some truly epic moments and huge surprises that await our fans. And we're doing them on a scale that's bigger and bolder than our traditional Flash episodes. Not only will Despero be a part of the villain dynamic, but Neil McDonough and Tom Cavanaugh returning as Damien Dark, that's impressive, and Eobard Thawne Reverse Flash, which is also cool. They were last seen together in DC's Legends of Tomorrow Season 2. With so many emotional ups and downs with the show in the last 7 seasons, this looks to be as epic as Williams puts it, but what lasting effects will it leave on the show are up in the air. The team-up aspect of multiple heroes has become a staple of the CW superhero shows. However, there are still multiple episodes in the season to still dig into the individual character moments. With the Flash movie coming out in 2022 and the show kicking off in November, it looks like the next year will be a big one for the Scarlet Speedster. It certainly will be, because Grant Gustin will also be in the Flash movie. I don't know if he's had a little cameo or if he plays a big role, but it will be great to see Ezra Miller and Grant Gustin as those two Flashes on a big movie screen as well. So I can't wait for that. We don't know if The Flash Season 8 is the final season either. Now, have they done the upfronts yet? I'm not sure. They normally announce these things at the upfronts. I don't know. I mean, I think it's 50-50 right now. But as for the trailer, I'm not impressed. Now, it's just a trailer. These 5 episode crossovers may be amazing. So I will obviously watch them and see how it all works out. But at the moment, with this marketing, with this trailer, I am not impressed. Let's talk about Zack Snyder. Right, so when all the reactions for Chloe Zhao's Eternals came out, some people were comparing it to a Zack Snyder film, to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, last night, I went to see an early screening of the Eternals movie. It really is true. This is nothing like any MCU movie, but I certainly wouldn't compare it to Zack Snyder's Justice League either, although it is very, very different. And this is not a video about Eternals, of course. But yeah, it's very, very different. And the problem with it, I'll just say before we go back to Zack Snyder, is because Marvel fans have been brought up on chewing gum that runs out of flavour very, very quickly, this is not the type of film they're going to appreciate, and we will see some fallout to that. But anyway, so it's interesting that Eternals is being compared to Zack Snyder's Justice League when just a few years ago, Zack Snyder got hatred, real hatred, divisive, toxic hatred for Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. How did we go from that to, oh, this is like a Zack Snyder film? In other words, you better like this film. You better go and watch this film. Because Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut got a lot of love from the broader audience. Interesting, right? A big change, because the tone isn't any different to Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. There may be a couple of extra gags, but not many more. The colours are dark. It's Snyder, wholeheartedly Snyder. So why do they like Zack Snyder's Justice League? And why do they not like Man of Steel so much? And Batman vs Superman is the film that got the hate that it did. I just think Batman vs Superman wasn't the film initially people thought they were going to get. And through shock, people reacted in the wrong way, calling the editing bad, calling it a bad movie, saying Snyder's a bad director. He's not one of those things. He's an auteur. Zack Snyder does things his own way. Warner Brothers has a history of allowing people to do this. You know, people like Matt Reeves and Zack Snyder will never make a film for Disney. Never. Zack Snyder recently saying he'll never do a Star Wars film because Disney own it. Because he knows he'd never get the freedom. And someone like Zack Snyder, it's not worth making a film unless you can make the film you want to make. Makes sense, right? And so he's getting all this kind of jolly, kind of nice things being said about him when just a few years ago, people hated him. And it's very, very interesting how, as I predicted, pre-Snyder Cut, I told you the Snyder Cut would be the most successful streaming event of all time. I also told you that they would never admit it was the most successful streaming event of all time. I've seen the figures. I know they still haven't admitted it, although they called it a bold movie during an HBO Max event recently, which is good, is a positive step forward, but they'll never admit how successful that film's been. And I told you people would change their minds about Zack Snyder. Not everyone, but the proportion of the population have kind of admitted that this is a very, very good director. In fact, going back to seeing a film, Batman vs Superman, they didn't like, and actually saying it's a really, really good film. So people are changing their mind about Snyder. But the man got a lot of hate, and wrongly so. It never made sense to me. The reactions to Batman vs Superman never made sense to me, even if it wasn't the film that you expected or thought you were going to get via the marketing. I still never understood the hate for the film. The film is so unique, so compelling, and it works. For me, it works. Now, everyone doesn't have to like a movie, but the vitriol that the man got for the movie is puzzling. And now they're comparing a Marvel movie to him, to his movie. That's nuts. That's a major, major turnaround. But why are they doing this? Well, something is changing at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I know this is the DCEU, but this is important to say. It's the same reason, probably, that he's delaying his movies. I expect those movies he's delaying to be reshot in part. Because Kevin Feige has realised one thing now, that the way he's always made the Marvel films worked, but they're not going to work anymore. People now want to see darker, more compelling movies. Look at the excitement for the Batman. Look at the excitement for Denis Villeneuve's Dune. The worm is turning, everyone, and these playful, light superhero movies are just not going to work for people anymore. And so the worm is turning. Interestingly so, even that sneak peek of Black Adam we got was incredibly dark. I've heard Snyder fans say to me, oh, they're going the Marvel way. You really think that? You really think that? The Flash clip we got wasn't very light, was it? Apart from when he pulls the cloth off the Batmobile and goes freaking whatever he says, which was kind of funny. The rest of it, I thought, was a little bit emotional and a little bit dark. So that's interesting. The Batman trailer, really, really dark. And the Shazam stuff is a little lighter because it's a lighter film, understandably. But still, it was very exciting to see the villains and stuff, and I think they're going to be really evil as well. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, they've talked about it being slightly more funnier, but at the end of the day, it doesn't look like a film that's going to be a comedy show. So the worm has turned, and Kevin Feige knows this now, and he's panicking. And he also panicked, admittedly so himself, about Batman vs Superman, and that's why he did Civil War. Because that film scared him. Now, it didn't come to pass there, where Batman vs Superman wasn't embraced, but the Marvel movie Captain America Civil War was embraced. But now things are changing. People do want to see darker, more compelling, films directed by auteurs. And this is the real reason that Kevin Feige brought Chloe Zhao in. The problem is, even people who have seen the film say this doesn't feel like a Chloe Zhao movie. There's a reason for that. Because she's directing it, but there's people interfering with it. She says she had freedom to do what she wanted. That's not true. She probably had elements of freedom there, as Patty Jenkins had with the first Wonder Woman, but Zack Snyder and other people were running that movie, and it's the same here. And this is where there's a problem, because let me tell you something about Eternals before we go back to Zack Snyder. The issue with Eternals for me is it's got a really good tone, but then you can tell that Feig's come in and said, we need a gag there. So you get a gag all of a sudden out of nowhere, and it doesn't make sense. It's out of place. This doesn't work anymore. Now, this is the problem they're going to have now, because they know the world is changing, and Feig's normally good at keeping up with the world changing, but the problem is his films have always been light and fun and exciting, with a post-credit scene and people getting excited for the next movie, and that's that. Well, now he's in trouble, because the company that he works with, Disney, are not made for movies made by auteurs, and they never will be. So they will be left behind by the DCEU cinematic universe, by this, impending Dune franchise, and so much more that WB are doing in the future. And Snyder was a look at the future. What Zack Snyder did with Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and his Snyder Cut was the future. And people were rejecting that future, because people always reject that future. But ultimately, in the end, the industry is now embracing that future. They have given Matt Reeves free rein to make his movie, his dark, compelling Batman movie with a very fresh take. We've seen the trailers. We've seen Batman. We've seen Robert Pattinson's Batman kicking and punching the absolute shit out of villains. And people like it. And Feig's seen this. So they're in trouble. This is why the other day we all of a sudden had a spoiler leaked for Eternals, and everyone was putting that into conversation to distract from the fact that the reactions for Eternals were mixed. And this is why on that day, pre the premiere, a few hours before the premiere of Eternals, they released that they were delaying their movies to try and distract from the mixed reactions to Eternals. And this is how the Marvel Cinematic Universe works, where Zack Snyder's films had all this shit before because people were rejecting this darker, realistic take. But now the world is ready for the Snyderverse to continue. Yesterday I was talking about the Injustice animated movie, and as I said in my reaction to it, when you're watching it, it's a great movie, but it's not a good adaptation of the source material. Now, Zack Snyder has already explained what his Justice League 2 is, predominantly, mainly set in a nightmare future, in the Injustice future. Zack Snyder was going to make a better adaptation, was actually going to make a live action adaptation, not totally copy and pasted, but mainly a live action adaptation of Injustice in his Justice League 2, because that's what happens. It's exactly the same story. You know, Lois is murdered, but it's not by the Joker, it's by Darkseid, and she's pregnant, I think, in that future, I can't remember. So, and then basically Superman is convinced to be, you know, a darker version of himself, a killer, a murderer, you know, a servant of Darkseid. So that film was going to be as close to a live action, you know, adaptation of Injustice than we'd ever get. And again, Zack Snyder is beyond his time. And he was making some very, very compelling movies. And now the world is ready for those movies. So it's interesting what happens in the corridor of power now at Warner Brothers, because things are changing at that studio. It's going to be bought by Discovery next year. How will they feel about Zack Snyder's Snyderverse? Will they just leave it behind? Will they go to Zack and ask him, does he still want to do it? I hope so, I think so. And so it's very, very interesting how the opinions of Snyder are changing, because at one minute, right, when we first start the DCEU, we got the MCU, it's light and fluffy, and everyone's saying, we want a light and fluffy DCEU. I never wanted that, I just wanted it to have a balance. Each movie doesn't have to have a dark tone, each movie doesn't have to have a light tone with comedy. But that's what the MCU have done, and now they're in trouble because the world doesn't really want that anymore. And as I keep on saying about the MCU, it is the chewing gum that runs out of flavour quickly. Let me give you some evidence of my analogy. Black Widow. Everyone's talking about Natasha Romanoff when that's released. Brilliant movie. Who's talking about Black Widow now? because it actually wasn't a brilliant movie. Now they're talking about Eternals. But it'll be interesting once people see the movie that I saw and see a reaction to it. Now, I think if this movie isn't an MCU movie, I'm talking about Eternals, I think people are going to like it. There's lots of flashbacks. It takes you out from the central point of the movie. There's a lot going on in this movie. There's a lot of story. There's a lot of character. So it's not the usual fare. This is not the chewing gum that runs out of flavour quickly. That's interesting because that audience has been trained on that. So how do you expect the family audience to sit through Eternals? But this is where we go back to Snyder again. We've already seen that from Snyder. And Snyder's very, very proficient at doing that. Now, I think Feige would have loved to have Snyder do Eternals, maybe secretly, something we'll never know about. Maybe he asked Snyder to do the Eternals and Snyder said no. Or maybe he didn't because he knows Snyder is a problem because he wants to do things his way. Now, Chloe Zhao was interesting in that element for me because she's, an auteur, an independent director that comes from, independent movies. And she sold her soul really just to do an MCU movie. I mean, what's the point, Chloe? You could carry on making your awesome movies and do what you want. And basically, you've given your artistic freedom up. Yeah, you said, I want to do a sunset. Great. So what? There used to be a sunset in the opening titles of the soap. Sunset Beach. By the way, that turkey-based storyline was pretty awesome. Anyone watch Sunset Beach? Loved it. Anyway, so I'm interested in someone like Chloe Zhao who gave up her freedom. Now, when you look at Snyder and the fight he put up with Warner Brothers, from Man of Steel to BVS and his Justice League, look what happened there, the civil war. I've never seen a public civil war between a director and a studio before. That's what it looks like, because Snyder fought for his artistic freedom, while Chloe Zhao went, well, I'll just take the fame and the money. But it's true, isn't it? You can't, I've seen the film, you can't tell me Chloe Zhao had total freedom in that movie. She had freedoms to make certain decisions. But Feige runs these movies. He's the storyteller in these movies. He's in charge. The only reason Chloe did Eternals is to make it look like they're implementing auteurs now, because they know that's where film is going. We're going back to auteurs again, and this is great for the exterior of the entertainment industry in Hollywood, because auteurs make their own movies. It means we get more variety and it's not just about capes. But also, it's great to have auteurs making superhero movies, because you get something unique and something special, like Joker, like Man of Steel, like BVS, like the Snyder Cut. And we're going to get more. An auteur made an Aquaman film. James Wan is an auteur. He's a great director. Look at the results. An auteur is doing the sequel. An auteur done Shazam and is doing the sequel to Shazam. So, the DCEU have already kind of seen the future. They were wrong to disperse with Snyder's services, and they know that now, because the world is changing, because Snyder changed it. That's the point I'm making, and that's why I keep on talking about Chloe and Eternals. I've got a lot of respect for Chloe Zhao as a director. I actually kind of thought her Eternals movie, who wasn't an MCU movie, was pretty awesome. I actually really enjoyed it because I thought it was unique. But going back to Snyder, Snyder changed Hollywood forever. We, by fighting for the Snyder Cut, changed Hollywood forever because we opened their fucking eyes. They opened their eyes, they watched the Snyder Cut, and they said, fucking hell, this isn't the Avengers movie with Joss Whedon. This is fucking amazing. The way he shoots stuff, the way things have been written by Terrio, that everything means something. It's very emotional, and that's what happened. Now, at the end of this year, what you're going to have is the normal conversation about what studio made the most money. Well, it's going to be Disney, as per usual. But let me make something abysmally, absolutely clear to you. In 20 or 30 years, the historians won't be saying, do you remember Spider-Man No Way Home? Do you remember how Disney whipped Warner Brothers with the amount of money they made in the box office and on day and date? No. They're going to say this. Do you remember Zack Snyder's Justice League and Denis Villeneuve's Dune. They were the best movies of 2021. They are two of the best movies of all time. History doesn't remember box office. It doesn't remember Collider, Shields, Shilling, Disney and the MCU. It remembers greatness. People remember the Rocky franchise, not because of the money it made, but what it did to people's hearts. People remember the Rambo movies because they made a statement about what happens to people when they come back from war, especially the first film, right? That's what Hollywood was. It was about variety. It was about, ultimately, great movies, right? Because unique individuals like Stallone were making movies and making statements with Rambo and Rocky. And then you had other, so many talented people when I was growing up. And this year won't be remembered. And we'll still get the articles about Disney doing better. And I will put the same thing up that I've said today. The only thing you're going to remember in a few years' time is Dune and Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. You're not going to remember fucking Free Guy. A pointless movie full of Easter eggs and cameos. You may have enjoyed it. You're going to say, Mick, but I enjoyed that movie. So fucking what? I enjoyed doing it with one of my former girlfriends, right? But I don't remember her now. I don't think much about her. I just did. But I'm just telling you, enjoying something doesn't make it good. Something being a one-off experience that you enjoy once and you've chewed that gum and the flavour's gone. The movies you remember are the great movies. You will remember the DCEU. You will remember Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman and even Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman and the Snyder Cut and Aquaman and Shazam. Maybe lesser, but you know what I mean, right? The Joker movie. The CBM history of this boom of superhero movies will be remembered for Smallville, for the DCEU. But it won't really be remembered for the MCU because they've only made 2 or 3 great, iconic movies. DC have been doing it for years. So as I said, the only movies I will remember from this year are Denis Villeneuve's Dune and Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. Because I don't give a shit about box office and how much a movie makes, as long as they make enough to make more. It's about my experience, my emotional experience, my soul-bursting experience. And those experiences will be with the Snyder Cut and Dune. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. Until then, goodbye.